You're listening to How We Heal, the podcast. I'm Kir Noel, medical intuitive, your host. Our sponsor is the medicinebuddhawithin.com, intuitive training for all. Check out their website and be invited to the upcoming trainings. Now let's begin our show. So I want to welcome you to How We Heal, the podcast with Kir Noel. Today, my guest is Keiko Sono, founder of BlissLab, an artist and activist, an intuitive in my experience, who has brought her own unique view to her life, her world, and those ideas and beliefs have sunk into me. Thank you for being here today. How did you become Keiko?
Well, thanks for having me here. This is pretty exciting. It's a pretty broad and loaded question because I am 63. So I've had quite decades to, get to where I am today. But I guess I would say, I think, like everybody else, the most important thing was my family, people who really supported me while I've been going through all of these really pretty far out crazy ideas, like how to solve the problem of capitalism or how to come up with a new economic, political, and cultural system that would foster more peaceful and rational, frankly, way of building a society. Those are the questions, not exactly in those words when I was little, but I think I've been just kind of chasing these big questions, kind of like a big game of chess. And sometimes that took a shape of art. I mean, most of my life, I've identified myself as an artist because I felt that artistic and aesthetic sensibility ultimately is what we would guide us. Because I'm not religious. I am spiritual, but like when you say, how do you evaluate your experience and learn which experience to follow and which experience to abandon? My guidance has always been aesthetics. So that's why I've always framed that in arts, but I lost a lot of time thinking that aesthetics meant artists, especially in commercial sense. Like even if you're doing really conceptual, political, fine arts, you're still in the commercial art world where if you want to make a living doing that, you have to convert your art into commodity. So I feel like I kind of wasted a little bit of time in that space because ultimately the answer to the question, what would the better system look like, could not be found in the art world as it is now. And then I switched to a lot of different things. I really got into permaculture, which was great. The concept of using land in a way that is self-sustainable and regenerative. And really cool thing about this is that these principles could be applied to other parts of life and also like society building, politics, all of that. To this day, my interest in permaculture is still there. And it's a great community. I built my network there. And then that led to my support for universal basic income. And I think locally, I am kind of associated with this concept because I've been asked to be part of panels and that kind of stuff. I was also a member of the think tank of Creative Rebuild New York, which was a like $3 million or more, $300 million basic income project that was sponsored by Andrew Mellon and Ford Foundation. So, I went through a lot of different spaces, like from art to, land management, ecology, all of that. But I was always chasing the same purpose, same goal, to answer that question.
What do you mean the same goal? Tell me what you mean by that.
So to find a new system that would really align more with our nature and culture. Like, for example, a lot of our business models that are based on the sole goal of maximizing profit, especially in capitalism where you have shareholders on top of workers and owners. Well, owners and shareholders are the same thing, but people who do operate those companies are not always owners, right? Also, there are customers. And because of the profit maximization goal, that comes a lot of times that comes at the expense of workers' rights and environmental costs and all of that, right? So that's not really working. So how would you adjust that, right? So you have to align everyone's needs and everyone's abilities and also their nature. We can't really go against nature. A lot of times all the legal systems that we live in, they clash with reality because a lot of that goes against our nature. And even like talking about that is very tricky, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because so I want to ask you a question. Did your visual art that you started, I guess, in the beginning of your career as an activist, you were a professional artist. You were okay, and you received the Paula Kresner Fellowship. I mean, you're a very highly regarded artist. Did that artwork inform these next steps you took?
Yes, directly and indirectly. Indirectly because, again, I was like pursuing kind of the answer to a bigger goal through, in this case, more narrow kind of visual aesthetic sense. I was doing these landscapes to express certain state of mind, not necessarily that landscape itself. It's more like the experience of being in that space where I felt the connection with the land and also connection with the history because I've been painting in the Hudson Valley. So I very much sensed the presence of like Hudson Valley School painters like Thomas Cole and Frederick Church.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
So
all the different
yeah.
artists.
So in that sense, yes, it definitely influenced me because that is still like a guiding principle that I come back to. Like when I'm doing like political work, even like through my cannabis business, connecting with the land is one of the most important things. So yes. And also it also influenced me directly, but not necessarily in a positive way. The experience that I had there of having to convert your artwork into commodity, especially a really high priced commodity that very wealthy people can park their money in. I mean, a lot of the high end art is
I like the way you said that.
well, it's
The
because
truth. It's the
it's the
truth.
truth. That's the fact. Nobody's hiding that. It's a vehicle to
That's
park the
right.
money.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. I mean, I have friends who work in that industry. It's very obscene. And the more successful you become, the clearer it becomes that you are the pawn. I mean, you are a tool for that kind of funneling. So I just like, okay.
Albeit a visible tool, which I think is better than where we are now. Visible.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that's beyond my capacity too.
Yeah. I mean, it's like to me, art is like the most sacred thing in life and world. And it's like handled by the most profane hands.
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
true. It's true. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not
So
yeah. It doesn't benefit us as a society usually,
no,
unless
no,
it's in a
it
museum.
does more harm, actually.
That's interesting too. So what I hear is you saw yourself as a creator of something that brought beauty and balance with work. And now I hear what you started maybe to go forward with is trying to bring beauty and balance to life, through the day-to-day activities
Absolutely. Yeah,
we
yeah.
have.
Yeah, for sure.
You worked on a campaign, didn't you, politically for the
Yes, yes. Because I was supporting universal basic income. Universal basic income at the time, this is like 2016, 17, around there. It was a pretty small group. I found out about them through Twitter. I joined Twitter in 2016 after Hillary Clinton lost. And Twitter was a totally different space back then. It was really a real like meeting place and a place where you could have actual conversation with other people. It really helped me through that kind of confusing time after Trump first became the president. And so that's where I met people in universal basic income space. And through them, I found out that there was this guy, Asian guy running for president. I heard about him in 2018 to promote universal basic income. And at the time, we all understood that that was his sole purpose of running for president because,
That was
you know,
Yang, right?
of course, nobody, so we were very appreciative. It's like, wow, this guy's really courageous and he's really working for our movement. I'm not sure, if that is the reason that he was running for president. And he went much, much further than anyone expected. And it was an exhilarating time. It was I had never been involved in a political campaign like that. I imagined that being on like Obama's campaign in 2008,
Right.
I'm sure was amazing, and 2016 Bernie campaign. But this Andrew Yang one was really interesting in so many different ways. Number one, he's Asian American, so it brought me closer to fellow Asian Americans. And also there was this interesting subculture that was attached to Yang Gang is what we were called. Like this stoner kind of like this, gaming community, single male, young, and former Trump supporters. A lot of Trump supporters were also on Andrew Yang's campaign. So I met so many people around the world virtually from totally different backgrounds, all uniting on the idea of UBI. And also Andrew Yang I don't know if you've ever read his first famous book called The War on Normal People. I mean, that is really the best book in my mind that he's written.
I have
It's
not. I will
amazing. That book, it
listen
came
for.
out at the same time, and I cried reading that book because there's a section in there where he talks about college. And at the time, like it was 2017 or something, right? So Sika, my daughter, was in college and my son was in high school. And Andrea talked about how absurd our education system is. That I was listening to his audio book and his voice is really caring. So I just remember crying in a car listening to that. So I campaigned for him. My life is like so full of really interesting coincidence. So Kira, you and I live in Hudson Valley.
Yes.
And so while I was like running, so I founded Hudson Valley Yang Gang, it's
The
this
supporters.
regional
Yeah.
group. And so I got to meet a lot of people. But before any of this happened, before Andrew Yang was at all on the map, I was at the Diamond Mills Hotel, Mother's Day buffet, and my family was there. And I look up and I'm going, that guy looks so much like Andrew Yang. So he and his family were also at the same Mother's Day buffet. And I had heard that he had a house in New Paltz. I'm like, oh, that's so amazing. So I went over to his table and I talked to him, and he came over to our table and we took pictures. And he was so excited to see me, because I started the Hudson Valley Yang Gang. So since then, Andrew's family and I have been kind of, being friends, especially with his wife, Evelyn. So, that was just a really interesting coincidence. So that's another really interesting thing about that is, so we think that we always hear that young people are not interested in politics at all, right? But this Yang Gang, sometime in the fall, Takemi, my son, comes home from high school, and he was only, I think, in the 9th grade at the time. And he says, hey, Mom, there are a lot of Andrew Yang supporters in high school. And I'm like, really? So we started organizing, and I met so many of his friends, like high school seniors and juniors.
Right.
They were
Wow.
all like Yang Gang. And I asked them to, make some content, right? So I could post on Twitter. So we did, then these kids, they got together and they went knocking on the door. They studied about universal basic income. They even like trained to do phone banking. I mean, it was amazing. And these kids are not like political nerds. These guys, these were like ordinary kids,
Right. Right. They just, well, I think yang and you, what you're talking about speaks to what we all want in life.
Yes,
No, we
exactly.
want to feel like we belong in this world and we are helping each other and not, corporate greed. And if I were wealthy, it might be okay. Nobody can live in that. I mean, I think it spoke to a lot of core issues. So I'm glad. I remember Yang and I remember the universal, the
Basic income.
idea of having enough to have a normal life and community and creating a community that supports that and helps each other. And what a great idea. What a great idea.
Well, it's not just an idea. I mean, now a lot of people are talking about UBI because just like Yang predicted back then, AI is just going to decimate the job markets. And now it's becoming true. So,
Yeah.
a lot of people are talking about UBI not as this panacea or even like a great solution. It is a band-aid. It's the least we have to do for the society to avoid further collapse and possibly violent, outcomes.
Oh,
It's a reality. It's not, some
no,
dream or
it's
anything,
not some abstract notion, right?
Yeah, it's not.
So so you're at this place where you've done that work and now, and now Bliss is starting.
Yes. So this
How
is
how
the
did you go from politics to Bliss?
This is the part that I did not predict at all. This
Mhm.
all happened really coincidentally and serendipity. So all of these things that we doing, like all those public art projects, which we didn't even talk about, and all kinds of things make me rich at all. In fact, all of my married life and parenting life, we've been like very, very stressed, under stress, financial stress most of the time. And I've always felt guilty about that for my children. And my husband had to work so hard to support my crazy projects.
I'm gonna take that out. I think you should support your crazy projects.
Well, no, of course he wanted to support it, but it was just me who was feeling guilty about it, right?
Yeah.
But so now, after Takemi left, I had more time. So I applied for a couple of jobs and I got a job at a CBD store. And because I didn't have any experience, like for most jobs that I applied, I got rejected. Like I didn't have any retail experience or anything. But this job, the only qualification that they were looking for is, do you like people? Do you like helping people? Do you like talking to people? Can you work alone? And I was like, yes, yes, yes. So I got this job and it was a high-end CBD, like wellness store. And they
Is it at Woodstock, Keiko?
it was in Kingston. Still
Okay.
there, but it's under a different management. It's called Your CBD Store Kingston. It's a really nice store. The decor is like spa-like, very clean and healthy, really, and smells nice. And they gave me a paid training. So I sat through like 12 hours of video and I was hooked. Those videos were all about the science of CBD, how they interact with our brain. And it's also essentially THC too, cannabis.
Okay.
Cannabis, THC, cannabis, CBD, hemp, they're all the same plant. It's just arbitrarily defined by law to be two different categories, but they're the same. So I learned for the first time, even though I had been consuming cannabis pretty much all of my adult life, for the first time, I really learned how those cannabinoids work on our brains and
Hmm.
how there are so many other cannabinoids other than THC in cannabis plant that just, I mean, the implication of these cannabinoids, like health and mental health, it's really enormous. Partly because it interacts with the endocannabinoid system in our body and brain, which is the network of transmitters and receptors. And this is actually the largest such network in our body. And I didn't know anything about it. Nobody knows anything about it. Have you
No,
heard of the
I'm being
endocannabinoid
educated
system?
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the master regulator. I mean, the fact that nobody really has even heard of this term, I mean, it's because of the prohibition, because cannabis has been illegal federally. There have been no scientific studies. There was no funding for research and studies. So, nobody was like studying this. And in fact, I think when people did start talking about it, like after they discovered THC in Israel, by a scientist named Raphael Mishulam. They first discovered THC because they were curious about the effects that cannabis plant had, right? And so they went from there and they went backwards. They found out that we have receptors. And well, if we have receptors, we must also produce our own cannabinoids. That's the only reason that they would have receptors,
That
right?
makes sense.
So then we found out that our bodies also make cannabinoids. Right now, we only know about two different types. One is anandamide, the other one is 2-AG. Anandamide, it comes from a Hindi word, ananda, which means bliss. That's why my company is called BlissLab. And this activates receptors in our brain. Those receptors are called CB1 receptors, and those are the most abundant receptors in our brain. There are more of those cannabinoid receptors than any other receptors, and nobody learns about this, right?
Nobody knows about it, right?
And they're like in everywhere from amygdala to frontal cortex to, all kinds. That's why THC can have so many different effects. But it's really complicated because depending on the dose, the effects that THC has on the same receptors in the same part of the brain, like if they interact with the receptors in amygdala, which is the brain's region of fight or flight, in low dose, THC can mitigate anxiety. It can just quiet down. But in high dose, it could overly excite it. So it's really complicated. But CBD interacts with these receptors, but not in the same place. They don't bind to the same area, but it binds to a different part of that receptor, thereby changing the shape a little bit, making THC to bind less strongly. So if you use CBD with THC, you can preserve the positive effects of THC while mitigating or reducing the risk of negative side effects. So that's just one way that CBD would interact with our brain and THC. That's just one of the many, many. So I found out about all of these in these training videos. And I did a lot more research. I watched hundreds and hundreds of hours of videos, and I read a lot of studies. And also at the same time, I talked to so many customers on the floor because we didn't have that many a day. So, we had a lot of time. And so all this experience led me to discover that there's a huge gap in the market. Like now with the legalization of adult use cannabis, anybody can get high THC flower products, but you cannot get low THC, high CBD, high CBG, or other minor cannabinoids products, especially in smokable forms like flower products or keef or pre-rolls. And yet there was a constant demand for that at the CBD store. Not a big demand, but people would ask.
Yeah.
And then after that, I started working at Herbal Woodstock, which is a wellness-focused adult use dispensary. The owner had a hemp company before then. And there too, there would be a few, even just like people a week or a month coming asking for CBD pre-rolls, which no one was selling. Like you just cannot get them. Like no dispensaries sell them. So I was like, well, I wonder if I can do that. So remarkably, the path to building a brand and selling smokable hemp products has been pretty easy without really going into details here, partly because I've had those experiences in both the hemp and adult use industries, and I was pretty well aware of the very complicated legal situations regarding both of these industries. So I was fortunate enough to get the right license and source the hemp and put them on a shelf pretty
What
quickly.
is it you call your product in terms of what is it
So I sell
when we buy it?
CBD and CBG flower
Okay.
and pre-rolls, not in New York State because hemp pre-rolls in New York State are illegal, but I can sell them in other states where they are legal, like Massachusetts. And I also sell CBD keef. Keefs are the resinous parts of cannabis flower where the THC and other cannabinoids, CBD in this case, are concentrated. So it's a really concentrated form of the compounds. So I sell those in a tin. And all of these are available right now at Herbal Woodstock, but hopefully soon at other dispensaries. And if anyone is interested, please talk to your dispensary and ask them to carry BlissLab product.
And the actual formulation of these products is in a facility or is it in your home? Where do you make your products?
So I import hemp from
Okay.
Oregon. Yeah, from
Okay.
probably one of the top hemp farms. And I'm a distributor.
Okay. Great. Great. And this is kind of the next level of expressing community and connection to help people kind of stay in balance.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. I mean, there's so many layers to this. I do think that cannabis is helpful already, but it can be a lot more helpful for a lot more people if the right education is
yeah.
provided. Like I said, it's very tricky right now because in the adult use space, the trend is higher THC. That means, so for a cannabis plant to have higher THC, it can only have up to about 30% of cannabinoids. That's the limit that a plant physically can have that, right? So
Oh,
if you're shooting for 30% or more of THC, you have to breed out other cannabinoids like CBD or CBG. And this is, I'm not really judging whether it's good or bad, but it is a trend. But I would say if this is a trend, I would want other trends also to kind of counterbalance that trend. You
hmm.
don't want anything like THC to just overshoot and, like eliminate other really beneficial parts of this plant. So that's what I'm trying to do. I really want to like counterbalance the trend in the adult use market.
Well, I would imagine the THC becomes more recreational, whereas what you're not always, but maybe on a regular for many, but
Yeah,
products you're making can be used medicinally and spirit, help you with your emotional balance in a
yeah,
productive way that doesn't make you, it's not to reduce the body's ability to heal itself. It all kind of a supplement to have it continually heal itself.
absolutely. You are absolutely correct. Exactly.
So that
Yes,
be
that propose.
and
Yeah.
that's something we don't think of when we do occasionally. My age category is, well, I'm 68. So my peers, oh, my backache, my arm, arthritis, CBD, right? But it's not regularly promoted. It's not something that my generation thinks is available.
Well, it's getting more and more. I mean,
It
the
is. Yeah.
seniors are definitely one of the fastest growing demographic in the cannabis
Right.
market. Just to go back to what you said, so you kind of differentiated recreational from like therapeutic use. I I'm in the belief that all use is therapeutic, even if when you call it recreational, like to have fun with friends or to relax, all those are
I
therapeutic.
think you're right. Yeah. I like the way you're restating it. Yeah. I mean, it's important to, yes, to relax, to connect, to laugh, to cry, all of it. Not to have your guard up. Yes, there's a spiritual enhancement in anything we do especially with plant medicine, because we're talking about something that is very available, natural. It surprises me New York won't let you have some of what did you call them? The roll ups, right?
Oh yeah, pre-rolls.
Yeah, that they won't let that be sold in
Yeah,
the
it's
state.
complicated. It's because of the way hemp became legal in 2018 Farm Bill. That law had a lot of loopholes where, people took advantage of to create very high THC concentrated products. So that's a whole different topic. There's a lot of, information out there on that, but yeah, it's complicated. The laws are so
So
complicated right
complicated.
now, and they're changing.
That's good. So when we look at your journey, visual art, painter, artist, and move forward into advocacy, political spheres and human rights. I would call it a human rights element of your story. And now doing the Bliss Lab. I think are you going to run for office, Keiko?
No, I'm not. I'm not. I would like to work with politicians for sure. And,
Uh-huh.
I mean, our area is very great for that. I have, met with Pat Ryan, Michelle Hinchy, Jem Metzger is my friend. And I do intend to reach out to them and let them know what I'm doing. So what's really exciting about this is that besides the fact that cannabis is something that I really do believe in, and like personally too, it's a really interesting medicine, and the connection between weed and creativity and art it is deep. And now that I'm in this space, this industry is so exciting, and really it is a little bit like the permaculture community, artist community. There's definitely a big overlap. The biggest difference is that in this industry there is money. I've never had that before. In all of the space that I've been in, politics, volunteerism, environment, art, there was fucking no money at all. But
Still,
now there is. So I
yeah.
can really experiment with this,
Wow.
up until now, it's all been just theory.
Right,
If
right.
I can really generate a lot of money, you know,
You do a lot, yeah.
that's why I'm really excited.
Well,
And
you
now
can
I'm
raise
really talking
you can
to,
raise oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So, I just started BlissLab, but, this is a whole new company in a whole new industry that is just still kind of building itself as we go. Everybody in this industry has a stake in not just for your company, but how to shape this landscape.
Mhm.
So that's such an exciting time. It kind of reminds me of the early internet age time.
Yeah.
I was involved in journalism then, so I did a lot of interview with the companies that were popping up in the 90s, over the internet. And there were a lot of women-owned companies then, like a lot of communities, there were bulletin boards, like there was this space called Echo that was really cool, and there was this space called the Web Girls Unite. And there was this air that nobody knew how this new technology was going to change the world. So there was a lot of optimism that this is going to change our society for the better. It'll decentralize and everyone will be able to, like maximize their creativity, blah, 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 and we all know how that turned out. But, this cannabis industry, I'm sure that it'll be taken over by mega corporations very soon. But right now there is still, I would say probably still, already kind of a tail end of the optimism, but there is the optimism still.
Now, do you know if there's someone on the West Coast doing what you're doing?
No, I am not connected with the West Coast at all. Right now, I'm just building my network within, local network. Another thing is because the way the law is set up, the adult use regulation is all within the state. Nothing crosses the
Mm,
state line, right? From seed to finished product. So it's a very unusual situation.
mm.
Every business stays within a state line.
Oh,
So
I
it's
didn't know that.
creating,
Wow.
yeah. So it's creating a really interesting dynamic. And there are so many neurodivergents and, BIPOCs and, non-binaries and all kinds of artists, creatives, what I including myself, I would call misfits. This is like an industry of misfits, and I just, this is, I feel
They're my
very
people too.
perfect.
I
Yeah,
love misfits. They're my
yeah,
people. I'm a
yeah.
misfit
This is
too.
my tribe.
I'm glad you found your tribe.
Yeah. Well, I've always, like artists, permaculturists, they were all that, but yeah, this is a pretty big net.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, you're bringing the kind of human needs are being met. Human needs are being met and not in some way of that money buys it, but that community creates that opportunity. And it sounds to me like you're on the edge of being able to go to teach about it and educate people and do you have a website yet,
Yeah,
Keiko?
yeah,
Oh, good. So how do people find you and
yeah.
Bliss?
So the website is the cannablисslab.com. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a little long. This.com.
And people can also write you on there and just if they're interested in carrying the product, right?
Yeah. So I only distribute to businesses right now. It's a B2B
Okay.
I'm a wholesaler, but the best thing to do is to talk to your favorite dispensary and ask them to carry BlissLab products. That's the best way. So my Instagram handle is Canna BlissLab. Yeah,
Okay.
Canna
Great.
BlissLab.
Great.
Just-
Fabulous. And what's on the new horizon for you? What is your next step with this?
Well, I just started. I'm just gonna. I'm trying to build my social media presence. That is my first goal. I started my Instagram, but I'm in the process of starting my YouTube channel, so that I'm really going to focus there. That's another topic. I've discovered content creator community as well. That I've been pretty active there too, and that's so interesting. And I see such a optimistic possibility in the marriage of content creation and cannabis.
Well, it sounds to me like you bring healing.
Yeah,
You're just bringing healing, and you've learned a lot in the course of this journey to understand what the power of that, helping your body heal itself, helping your body stay balanced, and how I think the timing couldn't be better. I mean, we all need to be balanced right now.
for sure. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And that's exactly what the endocannabinoid system is about. It's all about bringing your body into balance.
That's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for today. I think we just barely covered the surface of how you became you, and what has contributed to your life.
Yes, Keiko, thanks for being here and look forward to seeing you around town or when our daughters get together. Bye.
We want to thank the following people: Jennifer Maidman for original music. Listen to her on iTunes and Spotify. Drew English of Upstate Podcast Studio for sound and recording engineering. And all our executive producers. See you next time.